Alrighty there, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going? I hope you're having a wonderful day here on this Monday afternoon. The eclipse. Oh, look out. It's the end of the world. No, don't do all that. But anyway, it's not, folks. It's just another day. But for those wondering, my name is Blaze. I'm with my co-host Jason, and this is The Truth Behind the Magic. In this very episode, we're going to be talking about something very near and dear to our hearts, something we did, our very first program. It was everything and more. It was terrifying, horrible, scary, and there were some also good moments as well. It was well balanced all the way around. But yeah, what service are we talking about? We're talking about quick service, of course. That was our role. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my good buddy Jason to take it over from here.
Yep, in this video we are talking about bad service. Wait, whoops, quick service. No, really though. I guess to start off, I'll just talk about kind of my background in quick service. My first program, I was quick service for 7 months, which, like I've said in a couple of videos, even though we have like 2 years of college program experience between us, some people might be like, that's not a long time at all, really. But in college program terms, that's like forever. Because between the two of us, we have like at least 1.5 years of quick service experience, probably more. So in college program terms, that's like probably 5 programs at least of quick service experience. So yeah, I worked at Riverside. That was my home location there in the mill, as they call it. I was there for 5 months. Interesting experience. We will definitely get into that. But I was also deployed for 2 months. We might do a video on deployment because that's something that can happen to you on the program. They don't send you to Afghanistan. It might be worse, though, to some people. It might be worse, depending on how much you love your location. But I'm losing my train of thought today. Yeah, so I was at French Quarter for 2 months. Got deployed down to the French Quarter in Louisiana. Yep. But I was there for 2 months, and luckily that was a lot like Riverside, since they obviously both are a part of Port Orleans. It was pretty similar, but I'll probably get into that some more later. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and kind of tell them what your background is in that as well.
Oh yeah, no worries. So for those wondering, I worked quick service at Magic Kingdom, so the castle, all that. Now my particular area, if you will, was Liberty Square. So I worked at Sleepy Hollow. I did quite a bit at the Liberty Square stand there that sold the turkey legs. And, I also worked at occasionally Columbia Harbor House. So those were the 3 places that I worked, and man, saw a lot. Definitely did. And as you know, since Liberty Square is like 1790s, very early 1800s, if you really want to throw that in there. So obviously you got to wear very wool vest, wool shirt, wool pants, wool socks, and it's 95 degrees in Florida. And humid, so you gotta keep that in mind. So you're gonna be sweating, and the stuff you're gonna be working around is also very sweaty. It's gonna make you sweat a lot. So that is definitely a pro tip of mine. I'm just gonna throw in here off the bat. If you have your water bottle, see, here's the beauty of it. You can fill it with whatever you want. So like, if it's not really that busy and you want to fill it with some Powerade because you're feeling kind of sweaty and stuff, go right on ahead. If you want to fill it with that fancy lemonade, you make sure, you get the okay and look around, and you should be okay. But yeah, basically there wasn't a liquid off limits. Like, you could fill it with coffee, you could fill it with anything really, dessert, if you were really that clever with it. But yeah, as long as it fit in that bottle, you were good. But I definitely recommend like water, Powerade, stuff like that, just so you're staying hydrated. Because, man, the worst thing to do is like pass out from heat exhaustion. while you're working. So that's just something to keep in mind. So a little pro tip there about quick service.
Yeah, they're required to give you water regardless of where you work, what location. They have to have it available. But yeah, in quick service, one of the benefits is, well, depending on your location, you might not be allowed to do this, but a lot of the time you can use like the soda machine on break if they have one in the back. Like, not the back necessarily, but we had one in the kitchen that was used for the table service location that's connected to the mill, and we could use that thing. So I would get Powerade all the time. Sometimes I'd get the lemonade, although I remember there was one period where I kept getting the lemonade and my tongue actually ended up hurting from it after like a week or something. And I was like, what's going on? And then I was like, oh, I'm drinking so much of that lemonade that it's actually, even though it's not that sour, it's actually affecting me.
Right.
But yeah, something I would say is that if you see that you get placed in quick service, don't just immediately go, oh no, and like back out of the program or something. Because I'm still in the main Facebook group for the program, and I see people, on the weekly, sometimes multiple times a week, that are like, I got quick service, I think I'm gonna quit. How bad is this really? Like, don't look at it that way. Like, we definitely won't sugarcoat it for you. Quick service is one of the top, like, roles for being mentally taxing, especially, and can be physically taxing, too. It's definitely top 3 of the hardest roles in the program. I would say probably number 1. Most people would probably agree. I think the only other one that can really give it a run for its money would be custodial. But even then, a lot of people actually really like custodial, especially the resort custodial. Not to say that there aren't people that like quick service, but I just tend to find that you'll find good stuff being said about custodial, but quick service, it can be kind of hard to find it. Yeah. But yeah, even though it's the hardest role, essentially, it's also the number 1 role to be given out. And this is just based off of polls that have been done on the Facebook page, how many people you see saying they got quick service. I think attractions is number 2, and then number 3, it gets kind of murky there because some people say merchandise, but I think custodial might actually be higher. It probably is merchandise, though. But anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic there, but basically, just to make the point that there definitely is a chance you'll get it. Especially nowadays, they really don't care that much about your role preferences at all. Not that they ever really did, but it's even worse now. Because you don't figure out the job you're doing until, like, right before you get there. They used to tell you on day 1. Like, as soon as you got your acceptance, you knew what you were going to be doing. But yeah, if you get quick service, definitely don't back out. Don't discount the entire program just because of that. It's the people that make the program, not the work, honestly.
Right. And I was just going to say, too, like, I know we're going to be very honest, like Jason said, no sugarcoating, but, especially quick service, especially like quick service in Magic Kingdom and the hotel resorts surrounding it. Like, if you do survive it for 5 months, 7 months, or like me, like a year and a month, that's pretty impressive. And I even had managers when I was working there. They would tell everybody, they're like, hey, if you can survive this, you're going to be good no matter where you go. That's pretty true. Because there's nothing than having to tell people like, hey, turkey legs, and they go, what? You're out of turkey legs? Ah! It's crazy. Okay, like you have to, especially on the holidays like Thanksgiving, 4th of July. Hoy, wow, turkey legs are crazy. But one thing to keep in mind with it too. Another reason why people probably like custodial more is with custodial. It's one costume, but you're free range. You can go wherever you want to in the parks versus, like, for example, Liberty Square in Revolutionary outfit, you can't go over to Frontierland or you can't go over by Haunted I think Haunted Mansion's like the farthest, even then that's kind of pushing it. Disney wants everything very oriented to that specific themed area. So you cannot be seen in areas you're supposed to if you're in a costume for something else. That will get you termed immediately. Again, if you, even if you're, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, just because usually the trainers, like when you first get there, that's like one of the first steps is they're like, hey, we cannot go past this point. We can only we can only show the guests if they have a question, we can only show them how to go so far, and then that's it. So.
Right. Yeah. One of my roommates' last program, he was custodial. You definitely have a lot more freedom, especially if you're at a resort. I don't know exactly how resorts work because that's not what he did, but I think you probably can go around most of the resort. But I know in the parks, you can get bathroom shifts, which obviously you're in control of a bathroom. You can get zone shifts, which I think those are the people that you see going around sweeping stuff. And you can walk around quite a bit on that role, or on that, I can't think of it, position.
Right, position, right.
Also, I think there's trash can shifts where you're just in charge of like an attraction's trash cans or a certain area. And the prime shifts are the parade shifts where you just follow the parade, and you pick up stuff after it, and then you kind of just do Main Street or something like that after. But anyway, yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the parks and the resorts at Magic Kingdom, because I wanted to talk some about resort versus park quick service, because there definitely are differences. The parks are generally going to be busier at a location just because you were in the parks. That's where the most people are clumped up at one time. I would say the one disadvantage working in a park as opposed to a resort is that you typically don't have to start as early, because I think quick service locations at resorts open at like 7 or 8 a.m., but at the parks it's obviously park opening typically, or maybe there might be one or two open for the early morning entry. But you also get out earlier at the parks typically, unless you are working a party or something like that, because at resorts a lot of them are open till midnight or 1 a.m., something like that, at least 11 p.m. And it's also different when you get your big crowds, because in a park you'll probably get big crowds around regular like dinner time, but at a resort, if you're closing, you'll get the big crowds after the parks close. So it's going to be like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And depending on what resort you get, it can be almost as bad as the parks. I won't say as bad. There's definitely differences between them, but I worked at Riverside, like I said, which is pretty much the second largest resort behind Coronado, or maybe the third largest. And it's right next to French Quarter, and their dining hall is pretty small. That resort is just small. So people go back and forth between French Quarter and Riverside a lot of the time. So we would get slammed with people. Like, the difference between French Quarter and Riverside is huge. At French Quarter, sometimes you'd go an hour without someone coming up to your station. But at a resort like Riverside, I'm sure it's like this at Coronado, because I've been through their dining hall and seen how busy it is. Art of Animation or Pop Century are probably like this. You see a lot of people, because there are a lot of rooms. And like I said, after that park close, that's when it's going to get really bad. But yeah, there's a chance you might get like a prime location though. Like I said, French Quarter, not bad at all. Not the best, I'm sure, but it was not anything like Riverside. Something, I mean, if you got like Grand Floridian quick service, that's probably not that bad because hardly anyone's actually going to go there at the Grand. Wilderness Lodge, their quick service is just in a tiny room where you wouldn't even expect it, off in its own location. It was empty the one time we went there, which I know why you're laughing. Go ahead and tell the story because it's so stupid.
Oh boy. Well, the reason why I'm cracking up, folks, and why I, kind of interrupted him sadly, my fault. It's for those wondering, the Wilderness Lodge, if you've ever been to Great Wolf Lodge, okay, imagine that times 10 and on crack. That's what the Wilderness Lodge is. So we went, and yeah, literally, like, if you didn't know where it was, you'd be like, what the heck is this? And you'd be like, oh, it's their quick service location. Okay. Like, it is nowhere. Like, nobody goes there. But anyway, I was laughing so much because of, Jason and a few of our buddies, our roommates, we decided to get something to eat there. And one of them in particular, we'll call it a sandwich. It really wasn't a sandwich. It was this massive sausage. And he was not having any of it. He just started, oh boy. He was like, the mustard? Oh, I get what he's like, $12. You got me crazy and paid $12. So not only was the price crazy for him, just the sheer size of it. There were some references there about what he would do with it. We were hoping he wasn't going to actually do those things with it, but oh man, it was so bad, but so funny at the same time. So yeah,
as just you can see, like put it into perspective for people. This man walked into a restaurant called Roaring Fork at a resort that is based off prospecting in the California mountains. Welcome to Big Thunder Mountain. I know that's not California, but just to kind of set the theme. He walks into a quick service location and says, you know what I'm getting today here? Bratwurst. Because everyone knows those old prospectors loved bratwurst, and that's definitely their specialty at Wilderness Lodge. I mean, he probably would walk into Beer Garden at Epcot and order, like, butter chicken or something. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking.
Boy,
funny times.
So you're definitely going to have a lot of great memories when you're on the program. So that is good. That is what's up. But yeah, I mean, kind of a couple off of Jason with the resorts. Yeah, there is a difference. Now, most locations, I will say, at the parks, especially Magic Kingdom, it's going to be the busiest in the morning for sure. Like probably other parks, it's not going to be as busy. But yeah, Magic Kingdom out the gate, everybody's getting breakfast. And I mean, everybody. They didn't get breakfast at their resort. They're getting breakfast at Magic Kingdom. And we would always get swamped in the morning. We would always get swamped at lunchtime before the parade happened at 2:00. And we would always get swamped at dinner. But the beautiful thing was, and like Jason said with the closing times, like once the park started to close, the security would actually close off sections of the park. So by the time the fireworks show was going on, we were done. Like they closed off Liberty Square, and it was everybody was basically just in the middle there where the Walt Disney statue is with me and the firework and everything. So that was what would happen. So as soon as we heard it was almost like clockwork. As soon as we heard Happily Ever After start, close the doors, lock everything up, clean everything up, we're done. Like that's how it usually went. And one person cracked me up because he knew this, a guest did. He knew this, orders like $120 worth of food, and then leaves it there. And we looked for a while. I mean, we looked even after the show. We're like, normally we don't stay open, but we felt bad for the guy. Nowhere to be found. He was just balling like that, I guess. But yeah, so what ended up happening is that was one of the rare times the manager's like, well, he paid for it, so it's, might as well just go ahead and have at it. So a lot of the cast members at my location definitely went to town on it. And it was good. We had a good time. But yeah, you definitely, if you also work at the resort, or not the resorts, but the parks, especially Magic Kingdom, if you're closing and Happily Ever After is going on, just expect a lot of singing from your fellow cast members. Kind of helps get through it. The closing part also, it helps it's just Disney. That's what they do. We sing. So if you're not about the singing, well, I mean, good luck. But that's one thing too. But I will say also, so when that would happen, we would close and we'd be closed. That would take a whole nother hour of closing because we had to get everything ready for tomorrow. Everything had to be clean, stuff like that. Sometimes if people on our team, they were taking forever, that would take another hour. So sometimes, even though we closed at 8, we'd leave at like 10. And you'd be like, man, that sucks. And then, like I said, with the bus system being as bad as it was, maybe you're getting home like 11, 12 o'clock at night, and then you got to do it all again the next day sometimes. So, yeah, well, like I say, as I said, if you are claustrophobic, Christmas Eve, New Year's, stuff like that. Funnily enough, if you think Disney celebrates Christmas Eve, they don't. It's funny, their Christmas party ends like a whole week before Christmas. It was like, what? That's crazy. I know it is, but believe me, that I don't know why, but it does. But with quick service, there's another benefit is there. Because, see, you get the giant Christmas trees, the Little Debbie Christmas trees. Yeah, you get the great big ones. You get to take those home. And you got to be careful. You got to be careful with those because they can give you diabetes. Can't have too many of them. But, yeah, definitely with the New Year's, it will be packed. Disney will be like, hey, we can't let anybody until people come out of the park. So that's just something to keep in mind. I was blessed where I didn't have to work till midnight. Got out just before. So that was awesome. But yeah, usually during those nights, the park will stay open till like midnight or 1. So just to keep that in mind. Also for any of the events, usually like Halloween, Halloween goes on forever. The Halloween party starts, I think, mid-August, and they go up right until like end of November, early December. I think it's like December 1st is the cutoff. So they have a crap ton of them. So just keep that in mind. If you do work those, you're working till at least 10, 11 o'clock. Guaranteed. But again,
right.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, with each, either event or party or whatever your park is hosting, the beauty of that there is that you will get to try beforehand the treats that you're going to have at your location. So that's something to keep in mind, and it's usually pretty.
Right, and I know you had mentioned closing a few minutes ago, so I definitely have a lot to say about that. I'll just go ahead and get into that. So, yeah, if you're closing at a resort, you're probably looking at like midnight when you're going to be getting out. At least 11:30. If you're closing something that's really simple to close, you literally just have to put a few things away, that kind of thing, and you close right at 11, then you might have a chance of getting out of there in 15 to 30 minutes. And then if you're in whatever situation you may be in with the buses, that can add an additional time to actually getting back. But it can vary very heavily. I just said vary twice in 2 different ways back to back. I just realized that. But you can end up getting out of there sometimes I've had 2 a.m. when I finished closing, depending on what was the worst. If I was on the worst location and it was just a slammed, busy night. But closing is definitely the worst part of quick service, at least in my opinion. Opening and closing are pretty much the two really bad periods of the day. At resorts, I think opening is technically the busiest guest-wise, because a lot of people eat there before going to the parks. But I only ever worked 2 opening shifts, ever. I think 1 at Riverside, 1 at French Quarter. And opening is a lot simpler than closing. Typically opening, all you'll be doing is setting up like the food service area, maybe stocking some stuff if necessary. It might already be pre-stocked, and actually setting the food out there. In fact, the only time I opened an actual shop, it was at French Quarter, and I literally just put the bakery stuff out there. It was already in like a heated thing. I just took it out in the back and then put it out front. But closing, there's a thing called pre-closing, which is a big deal in quick service. I was surprised when I went to attractions because you didn't have to do any of it unless you were on one position. You would kind of have to do a tiny bit. But at quick service, sometimes we would have to start pre-closing up to like 2.5 or 3 hours before the actual end of the night. Like you start cleaning stuff off, putting stuff away long before it actually closes. And then if you're lucky, you'll still manage to get out of there like 15 to 30 minutes after close, like I said, if you do an insanely good job and it's not that busy. But definitely, even if you're scheduled to get out at like 11:30, you might have to get your time changed a lot. We always had to get our time changed pretty much every night, which means you've gone over your clock out time, but you just talk to a leader or coordinator and they'll change it. Like every night we would just have to line up at CDS, which is like the cast deployment system. It's a computer thing. We would just line up and they would change everyone's time. But yeah, closing is definitely rough. I'm sure each location has its like really bad position that you don't want to be on. They let me close what we called trash and tray a lot because I was like, it was my thing. I was just so good at that. They would typically let me close that. But I know last video Blaze mentioned that you start getting fewer hours towards the end of your program. And I think that's because the newer people get the worst shifts. Like it's kind of like a seniority thing. If you've been there a while, they prefer to give the newer people like the really bad closing shifts and opening shifts and stuff. So at the end of my program, I was typically working midday shifts, so I didn't even have to close anything. And that was totally fine with me. Those are the best, especially in quick service. It removes a lot of the hassle. But yeah, definitely just keep in mind going into it that closing is probably going to be the biggest hurdle you're going to have to cross. That is definitely the hardest part of quick service, at least in my opinion.
Right. No, I agree with you. You get pretty wild. I mean, man, closing. And then you got, we haven't even mentioned, I mean, closing's one part of it. Then, like, throughout the day, you're going to deal with guests that, like, are over the top. So, for example, at Liberty Square, Sleepy Hollow, funnel cakes. A lot of people were critics with it. It had to be a certain size. They wanted a certain... One person wanted so much powdered sugar, we even were like, are you sure? Like, this could literally give you diabetes and pass out from a heart attack on the spot. Like, it was just that much powdered sugar. And then also we had candied strawberry, which, wow, they're good. But again, diabetes. So some people go all out with that, and that was what it was. But another thing, too, is you will be covered. If you ever work that location, you will be covered in powdered sugar. And you have to tell the security guards it's not crack, it's not cocaine, it's powdered sugar. So they're not like, hey, what are you doing there? Because the one time that did happen, I had to explain, like, oh no, it's powdered sugar, powdered sugar. So yeah, you got to keep that in mind because you will have powdered sugar everywhere. So it's just one of those things that you need to keep an eye out for. Also, so some people are very particular, especially at parks, about how they want their food, or if it's advertised as what they say. Or I remember we had spicy chicken and waffles, and they have coleslaw. A lot of people didn't want the coleslaw; they just wanted the chicken, and then it'd be real spicy. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's so spicy!" And you're like, "Eh?" So it's called spicy chicken and waffle. That's why we give you the coleslaw, so it takes down some of that spice. But people are people, and they want to learn the hard way. And this is my tip there, is that I'd be dealing with guests that may be incredibly frustrating, but can't cuss them out. You can't say anything bad to them. You will get terminated. I feel like Phil from The Amazing Race. If you do these things, you will be eliminated. I don't know why. It just makes me feel like that. But literally, I mean, it's the truth, though. If you do any of that, like if you try to cuss somebody out, or if you're like, hey, you suck, our food doesn't suck, or whatever, yeah, you will definitely, your leader will hand you aside, and that'll be all. So just something to keep in mind. It's a very high-stress job, so you need to roll anyway. So you need to make sure you always have a good peace of mind and relax. And if you get stuck with washing dishes, hey, that's usually a good thing for some, because you can take a piece, like a smaller piece of metal, like container, and you can put your phone in there and you can listen to music. You can be jamming. So, yeah, that's the one way to look at it as well. So just keep that in mind. Those are some things from my experience working at the park. Man, yeah, you're going to deal with some guests that are very, very rude and mean or whatever. Their day's not going as well as they'd hope, but you guys got to stick through it. Not everybody's like that. And some guests are even nice enough. They'll bring cards, they'll give candy, stuff like that. So it all balances out, but just keep in mind, if you stay the course, you'll be better for it.
Yep, especially with quick service, you definitely come out of there feeling like you have accomplished something, that is for sure. And yeah, like Blaze said, it's definitely a very high stress role, but you will eventually get into the swing of things. Like by the end of my first program, I was very smooth with all of that. I didn't really get stressed. Like I said, I was pretty much the master of trash at my location, so everyone would trade that position with me because no one wanted to do it, and I always wanted to do it. And that's another thing, something I wanted to get into is kind of what you'll actually be doing in quick service, which obviously you'll be serving food. That is a part of it, but there's a lot more that goes into it that some people might not realize. And obviously, like I always say, this can vary substantially from location to location, because if you're working at somewhere like Sunshine Tree Terrace and you're serving the orange swirls and that kind of thing, that's going to be your life. Like you make, well, it's not Dole Whip, but it's the Dole Whip equivalent. That's what you're going to be doing all day at that location. Somewhere like I worked had what we called shops, which, since it was a dining hall, we had a lot of varying places that you would go to get certain types of food. We had the burger shop, pizza shop, bakery, soup and sandwich, and you'll get trained on all that. And that's another thing I wanted to get into, is training, because we have a whole video on like the training week, and definitely go watch that if you want like a detailed description of training. But I will say, in quick service, It's only 4 days of training. That's pretty much normal. Like, that's what you're going to see in most Disney locations, I would say. And you do have to train a lot of positions. Not as many as attractions when I worked at Toy Story Mania. That was crazy. But yeah, literally, you'll meet your trainer. You'll probably almost immediately start going and actually getting on positions, and you just go through each shop, going through each duty, what you'll have to do on each position. Like I said, trash is one thing that, depending on your location, custodial might be in charge of it. But I know at the resorts, especially, you are typically in charge of the trash cans in the dining hall. I know we had quite a few at Riverside. Running a cash register is another thing with that. I did not like working register because I honestly don't like dealing with people's money at all. It's just, there's a large margin for error there, but luckily I rarely ever had to work that. You'll probably also have like dining room duties, which is going around sweeping, cleaning tables, that kind of thing, which I liked doing that because you could just roam around and pretty much do your own thing. You might also, depending on your location, have like a small market area. We literally called it the market that we had to stock. It was mostly food items, maybe like a couple non-food things like the resort refillable mugs and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there are a lot of positions in quick service. You may end up doing stuff that you did not expect. I know that Casey's Corner has someone that literally is on fry duty, and not even like making the fries, but just running to the back, running between the freezer and the location. You have to do it nonstop. You need that many fries. So yeah, I know that was kind of a long spiel there, but basically there's a lot of positions. You never really know what you're going to run into. So kind of go into quick service expecting the unexpected, because you may be very surprised what you actually end up having to do on the job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there might be a point where, and we've talked about it earlier, but food waste, or, again, you're cleaning the out, like there some condiment bars, stocking that all up. And, you have to give the guests what they want, no matter what the case is. I remember we were about to run out of salt. But for the turkey legs, now mind you, the turkey legs were loaded with salt. That thing is salted to the max. And the guy wanted more. And we can't be like, hey man, what the heck's wrong with you? Think about your heart. You just gotta give him more salt. So that's just, you gotta keep that in mind. Like, even if it's something probably ain't gonna help them, you just have to go ahead and do it. If that's what, they paid quite a bit to get in. So the feeling is like, hey, if they ask you for something, go ahead, give it to them, especially if they're paying for it. That's what the feeling is there. So if you see people that probably shouldn't be eating something or probably shouldn't be having that, Disney's like, oh, they paid. And we like, that's basically where that is. Yeah, so you will typically with quick service, we work at minimum probably 8 to 10 hours at least. With that, you just got to keep in mind, okay, you can use things like the parades and then the fireworks show if you're at the resorts to kind of like be like, okay, this is, the fireworks at the end. The first parade's like you're halfway through. The second parade's like, okay, you only got a few more hours left. And then the fireworks show's 3 hours later. Well, you can use timestamps like that, so that way you're gauging your day if you're like, man, it's just so boring, but at your location. But there's something like that to keep it. Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, something I definitely wanted to talk about was related to that, and I basically just wanted to say that even though it is a high stress role, It's extremely fast paced. That's not necessarily all bad, because like when I worked Bell Services, they'd put you on a location, put you on a position, and you would work there all day. You get 1 hour break in the middle, and other than that, you're just standing out there at the desk. And depending on which desk you were at, you could be out there by yourself for hours on end. That doesn't happen in quick service. At least from my experience, you're only on a position for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at a time, and then you get a break. It might be shorter than that in some locations. It's not a safety critical role, so they're not required to rotate you out every so often, but you will typically get like your 15-minute break. You'll come back out, be on a different position, go back, take your longer break, and then go back out again. If you're working an 8.5-hour shift, you'll have the third break. Then you go back out and you typically pick up a different position one more time, and then you close. And I will say with quick service and attractions as well, when I worked it, these shifts go by fast. Like ridiculously fast. Because you are doing so much. Honestly, if we wouldn't have had to do so much after close in quick service, it wouldn't have been that bad. But really, I would say a 12-hour shift in quick service felt like an 8.5-hour shift in Bell Services. Because in Bell Services, you were just standing around, not doing a lot for quite a bit of the time. So it's not necessarily all bad having a really fast-paced environment. It can have its benefits, and I would say that's definitely the biggest one, is that you will not get bored, and sometimes you will be very surprised at how fast a day goes by.
Right. Yeah, the things that, again, there are some days where it's going to go super fast, and those are the best days, because you're like, yay, it's over, and if you got a day off coming up soon, then man, it's the best feeling in the world. But there will also, like I said, there'll be days where you're really just going and just, it feels like an hour's gone by and it's only been 10 minutes. So there is that as well. Another thing too, something that you might have to deal with the resorts versus the parks. Typically with the resorts, they have the refillable cups there, versus the parks where they're not allowed. If a guest cannot hand you a container to fill something with, whether that's water or anything, you can hand out what's called a cup of water, and usually we'll have about 40 or 50 of those just ready to go, because it is Florida, because it is so hot. And typically, if there's not a water fountain nearby, you just expect like people to come up and be like, "Hey, I'll have 4 cups of water, 10 cups of water, 20 cups of water, whatever the case is." Just be ready for that. And even if someone's like, "Hey, there's something wrong with the soda; it's not syrupy enough, or the carbonation's gone out," don't take it back and use that same cup. You just say, throw that one out. You get you give them another one, after you've restocked the syrup or whatever, or carbonation, or whatever the case may be, and then go from there. I literally, I kid you not, my first week working for Disney, this guest, she was like, did you put something in my drink, blah, 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 ma'am? I just started working for Disney a week ago. Why would I do anything, put anything, have anything other than your drink in your cup? Like that, it makes no sense to me. I came down here to do this program. I didn't come down here to mess up people's drinks or mess with people's food so they get food poisoning. That will get you fired. I mean, if they do find out that you're doing that. But really, you shouldn't be doing that anyway, because it's one of those situations like, how would you feel if someone was doing that to you? Like, you would, of course, that'd be crazy, and you would never want that to happen. So, Yeah, you got to keep that in mind too. There will be people that are very particular about their soda or something, and they might even be like in spite. They might say something smart like the best thing to do is just ignore them, keep doing what you're doing. Just you can always hit them with "Have a magical day." That was like the go-to thing. If a guest pissed you off enough, that was like Disney's like, okay, you can say this. It's not cussing at them. It's not saying anything bad, even though obviously the intention is you might want to say a cuss word. You can just be like, okay, have a magical day, and then have them go on and deal with the next thing. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, you definitely will deal with some angry guests in quick service. I know a lot of people, since it's called quick service, expect the food to be ready almost instantly. Sometimes it is not. Obviously, you have to wait on stuff to be prepared, especially if you're working with a culinary who actually has to prepare the food and set it out for you to give to the guests. And that's another thing. You'll really, typically at your locations, you'll really have a dichotomy with the culinaries. Some of them are just absolutely terrible people. I mean, you could say that about any position at Disney, but I know especially some of the culinaries, it was very awkward working with them because they're different than the front of house cast members, but most of them are good. I'm still friends with some of the culinaries that I knew. But yeah, I think we've given a pretty good overview of things. Really just to sum it up, like I said at the beginning, don't act like all is lost if you get quick service as your role. A really good benefit of it is you will probably have a lot of other college program people at your location. I know at Riverside, after like 3 or 5 p.m., it was like 90 to 95% some nights just college program. We ran that place. I've never seen that in any other location or role that I've worked. Maybe it was because none of the full-timers wanted to stay in quick service. That could be the case. But you do not see nearly as many of them. You typically have a lot more college program people working at your location in quick service. Like I said, pretty much to sum it up, just don't give up if that's your role. Enjoy the experience. Your role is not what makes your program. Like I said at the beginning, it's the people. It's your leaders. If you have really good leaders, then you can pretty much get through anything. But yeah, we definitely hope that this has helped you in some way to kind of grasp your head around what quick service is, kind of the differences between parks and resorts, really an emphasis on opening and closing, and you will be working one of the two of those on your program. I can pretty much guarantee you'll probably typically do one or the other. But other than that, I think that's pretty much all I have on this. I don't know if you had any kind of closing statements, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when you do, I would also say this: when you do need to go to like a part, maybe that's not directly in your location, but like you have to deal with culinary people. If they're always generally nice, just kind of be respectful for what they're doing as well, because you got to remember, like at Magic Kingdom or especially Liberty Square, ours was behind Liberty Tree Tavern, so it was like, and if those who don't know, that's a full-on family style buffet where they're just constantly having to crank out stuff. And then it was also connected to Diamond Horseshoe, which is also another all you can eat buffet. So basically you had 2 buffets and a restaurant all in one kitchen. And then, by the way, they're making you turkey legs or hot dogs or whatever the case may be on top of it. So, if you're having a bad day, don't be cranky with them. In fact, they usually say the funniest things, maybe about your leaders, that you think like, well, this leader's a jerk. They might also be like, yeah, that leader is a jerk. Tell him I said so. I mean, Like, it's comedy gold. I had a lot of fun with it. Coordinator people and me, very chill. So, other than that, yeah, I think that's all I have. We summed it up pretty well. And, well, yeah, like we say, if you get it, it's not the end of the world. Just be ready for, the occasional guest either acting crazy, maybe they're taking something. If so, just make sure you get medical help. Know how to, if obviously notify your leader, and then, if you do know how to do the Heimlich maneuver, by all to save the guest, go ahead. I had to do it, so it's just something to keep in mind while you're doing the quick service role. But yeah, you should still have fun. You are the toughest person, if you are involved with it. And literally, yeah, it's like basically, think of it like passing basic training. It's basic equivalent of that. Once you pass that, there's not a job or role or skill you couldn't do. And if your location's good about hiring people back, then man, you will kill it. You will probably be in leadership before you know it. If you show enough drive and emphasis, and the leaders catch that. So, yeah, that's all I have. So, like I said, folks, thanks for joining us. And, keep subscribing, keep liking the videos. You can add comments of what you think we should do next. We're just basically trying to get everything we think is very important. But if you guys want to hear something in specific, or have us go into more detail about a specific topic, please just drop it below in the comments and let us know. Until next time, stay blessed and stay mad.